Today we're going to talk about my favorite birth and pregnancy resources. Welcome back to the vlog, guys. If you have not already, please be sure to subscribe and turn on that notifications bell so you don't miss any new videos. I'm super excited about today's episode because I am sharing all of my favorite pregnancy and birth resources. So with that, we're going to be talking about podcasts, books, and more. Let's kick this video off by starting with my favorite books in relation to pregnancy and birth. The first book is The Zen Mama, Guide to Finding Your Rhythm in Pregnancy, Birth, and Beyond. Teresa Palmer and Sarah Wright Olsen wrote this book. You may have heard of them. They are actresses in Hollywood and entrepreneurs. I followed Teresa actually on Instagram and found this book because of me following her. And then found out that they actually started a podcast as well. They have their own podcast called The Mother Days, which we'll get into a little bit later. But this is a really awesome book. Whether you are choosing a more holistic style of pregnancy, birthing, or more Western medicine, very medical birth pregnancy experience, they talk about all of that in this book. So there really is something for everyone in here. They have a ton of kids between the two of them, so they have a lot of wisdom when it comes to motherhood. I love this book, highly recommend it. The next book is The Business of Baby, What Doctors Don't Tell You, What Corporations Try to Sell You, and How to Put Your Pregnancy, Childbirth, and Baby Before Their Bottom Line. This may be a controversial book, but I love it. Pregnancy and childbirth are very vulnerable times, and we have been taught to put complete faith in the doctors without asking any questions whatsoever. But I have a lot of questions, and I want to know what choices I have for my body and my baby. And this book was recommended to me in my first pregnancy. I've read it a couple times and given it to a couple friends to read. It's absolutely incredible. If you are interested in knowing the facts of what's going on surrounding pregnancy and childbirth, this is a must read for you. It talks about everything from pregnancy, birth costs, circumcision, breastfeeding, diapers, bottling, all of that stuff, and the history of maternity care in our country here in the United States. It's very, very interesting. Highly recommend. The next books that I want to talk about are kind of a twofer, but I only have one physical copy here with me, and that is Ina May's Guide to Childbirth and her Guide to Breastfeeding. So I have read both of these books. I actually read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth when I was pregnant with Lola. Actually bought it as an audiobook, so I listened to it. It has incredible stories in it, and I love listening to all the various birthing stories. If you're not familiar with Ina May Gaskin, she is like the midwife of all midwives here in America. And she co-founded what we know in Tennessee to be The Farm. And women would come and have births with her as a midwife, doing a home birth style, very natural and holistic approach to birth. Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth is a must read. Highly recommend the audiobook. And then this is Ina May's Guide to Breastfeeding. This book is like having a childbirth consultant and a lactation specialist like right next to you. Breastfeeding seems like it's such an instinctual, natural thing that you would just know how to do, but it's actually quite complex, or it can be, and a lot of women can have difficulty with it. I know I did, especially with my first baby, and now that I've had 3, I've just gotten better each time. It's gotten more simple, and it has gotten more instinctual now that I've done it a few times. But this is a really great resource, the Guide to Breastfeeding. Highly recommend this. All right, I'm sure there are more books that we could talk about, but those are my top 4 books that I'm gonna recommend. Now we're gonna move along to podcasts. The first podcast I want to talk about, I already mentioned, Teresa Palmer and Sarah Wright Olsen from The Zen Mama. They actually started a podcast called The Mother Days, like I said before, and I love following them and their podcast. They share their own birth stories, and they also have a lot of birthing professionals and various mothers coming on to share their stories. So it's a very fun podcast to listen to. The next podcast I want to talk about is Pain-Free Birth by Karen Welton. She's a certified doula, childbirth educator, and coach who teaches women all over the world how to birth without pain. She has has online courses and a bunch of stuff, but I love her podcast. Again, just like the Mother Days, she brings women on, both birthing professionals as well as various mothers, to share their birthing stories. It's an incredible podcast to listen to. She is a Christian, and as are we, so I love listening to how she discusses how God brilliantly and perfectly designed our bodies as women to birth children. It is a great podcast. The next podcast I want to talk about is a newbie for me. I just found it in this 4th pregnancy and I love it. It's called Birthing Instincts. It's really cool because 2 individuals that you wouldn't think would come together came together to create this podcast, and they have incredible content. They have over 55 years combined of experience in the birthing world. It's Dr. Stewart and Midwife Bliss. They have a weekly podcast coming out where they talk about their latest births, the most recent studies and research, instinctual births, things like that. It is an awesome podcast. I love listening to Dr. Stewart's MD wisdom and Midwife Bliss's holistic approach to birthing. They have so much wisdom between the 2 of them that it's just so fun to listen to them talk and banter back and forth and listen to how much knowledge they actually have on this topic of birth. It's awesome. You should listen to it. The next one is a podcast that I've been listening to since my 2nd pregnancy, and this is the Informed Pregnancy podcast with LA-based chiropractor Dr. Berlin. He has really cool episodes where he has a guest on before they have given birth, and then he has them on after. So he talks about all the pregnancy stuff, and then after they come back, they talk about their birth story. So I love that. You will probably see a lot of celebrity names on that list, but he talks about things from pregnancy, birth, and beyond. He has experts on. It's a very nice podcast. Love listening to that one as well. All right, we've made it to the last podcast that I'm going to share, and that is Down to Birth with Cynthia Overgard and Trisha Ludwig. Once per week, they let out a podcast with evidence-based straight talk on having a safe and informed birth. This is an incredible podcast as well. They have people on to discuss their birth stories as well, just like the other podcasts that we discussed, but they also talk about things like breastfeeding, getting pregnant, so talking about ovulation cycles and things like that. They talk about co-sleeping, the NICU, variety of topics, but this is an awesome resource. I love listening to all these different podcasts. It is just so refreshing to hear other people's birth stories. I find birth absolutely beautiful. I love listening to the stories. I love listening to the professionals and getting everybody's different points of view, whether they are the same as mine or different as mine. All of these podcasts are going to be incredible resources for you if you are pregnant or have children already. It's just an amazing resource of podcasts to listen to. Okay, we've made it to the last resource that I want to share with you about pregnancy and birth. And this is a great one. I used it during my 3rd pregnancy, and I am using it again in my 4th. I think that I had such an incredible 3rd birth because of this resource and it helping me to mentally prepare for birth, because that is what birth is. You need to mentally prepare. It's not just physical, it's very mental. And that is Christian hypnobirthing. Tara Menzies started the Christian hypnobirthing app back in 2018. She actually has been a guest on a variety of the podcasts that I have already discussed, and she created this app out of necessity. She actually made this because she is a Christian, God-fearing woman, and there was no Christian hypnobirthing resources when she had children. So she started her own research and started creating the resources that we currently have in the Christian hypnobirthing app while she was having her 2 children. There is a course as well as the app. The course was amazing, absolutely loved it. And then the app is what I used every single day for the last 4 months of my 3rd pregnancy, and it was a game changer. I had been hearing about hypnobirthing, and I actually had a friend that took a hypnobirthing class, but I thought it was kind of like voodoo weird stuff. I don't know, I didn't have a good opinion about it, but I Googled Christian hypnobirthing and this app came up. I took her course and I downloaded the app, and it's incredible. It is so faith-based, and hypnobirthing isn't about getting you into hypnosis. It's about getting your mind and your body calm. It's basically a series of tracks that you listen to. There is scriptures, prayers. It's just basically her building you up and lifting you up on this app and you listen to these tracks every single night. And I think that that mental preparation is what made my third birth my easiest birth thus far. It was under 3 hours. I barely felt like I was in any real pain the entire time I was in labor because I was using her techniques of breathing. I was reciting the scriptures and the prayers in my head while I was in labor and while I was pushing. It was amazing. This app was life-changing for me, and I am using it now in my 4th pregnancy. Super excited to go into this 4th pregnancy just as mentally prepared as I was the last time. But I highly recommend that app. It is an amazing resource. You will not be disappointed, I promise. And that's it. Those are my favorite pregnancy and birth resources that I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions about any of the resources that I talked about today, please let me know in the comments below. I would be so happy to answer any of your questions that you have. I want to thank you so much for watching today's video. We will see you next time.